2 players, 1 trophy, and a backstory that nobody who covers professional tennis had ever seen before. Because 3 days before this final, these 2 women were on the same side of the net, laughing together, practicing together, competing as doubles partners, sharing tactics, sharing court time, sharing the particular intimacy of teammates who trust each other. And now one of them is about to walk onto center court at Edgbaston Priory Club, knowing that the person standing across the net knows everything. The habits, the tendencies, the patterns under pressure, the things that never appear in a scouting report because they are too human and too small to survive being written down. This is the 2026 Lexus Birmingham Open Final. Alex Eala against Nikola Bartunkova. And this is the match that could change both of their careers permanently. Let me set the scene properly because the atmosphere in Birmingham today deserves to be understood before a single ball is struck. The sky is clear. The grass at Edgbaston Priory Club has been cut to the precise conditions that make this surface one of the most unforgiving and most beautiful in professional tennis. Every available seat is filled. The scent of freshly cut grass is in the air in the way it only is at the specific overlap between late spring and early summer when the English grass court season reaches its peak. Millions of people around the world are watching through screens. And somewhere in the crowd, there are people who have been here all week, who have watched every match, who have followed both of these players through every round, and who understand that what they are about to witness is not just a final. It is a collision between 2 visions of what the future of women's tennis looks like. Alex Eala is 21 years old, the top seed, the pride of the Philippines, a player whose rise through the WTA rankings has not been gradual or quiet or tentative. It has been swift and powerful and impossible to ignore, the kind of ascent that forces the entire sport to reorganize its understanding of where elite talent can come from. She left the Philippines as a teenager to train at the Rafa Nadal Academy in Spain, one of the most demanding player development environments on the planet, and she survived it and grew from it, and came out the other side with a game that is built for this exact moment. She has spent this week at Birmingham playing some of the best grass court tennis of her career. Not a single set dropped across the entire tournament. That statistic alone, on a surface that punishes hesitation and amplifies mistakes and produces momentum swings from 3 consecutive points in a way that no other surface does, tells you something important about the state of her game and the state of her mind coming into this final. Across the net stands Nikola Bartunkova, 20 years old, Czech Republic, a player who does not always receive the same headlines as the player she is about to face, but who has assembled one of the most quietly impressive tournament campaigns of the entire 2026 season. The Czech Republic has produced generation after generation of elite women's tennis players, and the development environment that creates has given Bartunkova something that is genuinely rare in athletes her age. She plays tennis the way a much more experienced player plays tennis. She thinks during points rather than simply reacting. She identifies patterns in real time rather than discovering them afterward in video analysis. She adjusts between games in ways that opponents do not always recognize until the tactical damage has already been done. She arrived in Birmingham without the seeding pressure and the national expectations and the weight of being the favorite, and she has used that freedom to dismantle every opponent placed in front of her with a precision that has made tennis observers pay increasing attention to a player they may have been slightly underestimating. Before we get into what this final is going to look like tactically and what each player needs to do to win it, you need to understand the journeys that brought both of them here. Because the path matters. The path tells you about the character of a competitor in ways that rankings and head-to-head records and surface statistics simply cannot. For Eala, Birmingham represents something that extends far beyond its position on the WTA calendar. She arrived in England carrying the specific weight of a Roland Garros exit that happened much earlier than she or anyone in the Philippines had hoped. Clay season ended in disappointment. And what she has done in response to that disappointment over the course of this week is the story that the tennis world is actually watching. Even if the commentary is technically about her shot selection and her first serve percentage and her court positioning. She arrived on grass, and something unlocked. Somewhere between the red clay of Paris and the green courts of Birmingham, she found a surface that fits the way her game is constructed and the way her instincts work and the way her left-handed serve creates problems that opponents on this particular surface have the least amount of time to solve. Her opening round was a statement, not a comfortable progression. A statement. She imposed her game from the beginning, controlled rallies with the aggressive baseline play that has made her one of the most exciting players on the tour, and won convincingly in a way that sent a message to the rest of the draw. Not just that she could win, but that she intended to dominate. The second round tested her in the specific way that elite competition needs to test you before a final. Momentum shifted. Her opponent found solutions. The comfortable match became a battle. And rather than waiting for conditions to return to normal, she adjusted, sharpened her decision-making under pressure, and came through. Those moments inside matches, the moments when everything stops working and the player has to find something real rather than rely on something habitual, are where the actual character of a competitor is constructed. She passed that test. The quarterfinal reinforced the impression. She moved through it without dropping a set, and without the kind of visible stress that accumulates when a player is working too hard to maintain a level that does not come naturally. She looked like a player on a surface that makes sense to her. And then came the semifinal, which was the most revealing performance of the entire week. Rain interruptions kept halting the match, forcing both players to reset mentally time after time, robbing them of rhythm at precisely the moments when rhythm had been established. For lesser competitors, that kind of disruption becomes genuinely destabilizing. The momentum you fought to build disappears every time you walk off the court. The concentration you assembled from carefully, point by point, has to be reconstructed from nothing after every delay. Eala handled it by elevating her game whenever the pressure intensified rather than allowing the interruptions to accumulate into an excuse. That is a specific quality that champions possess and that aspirants spend careers trying to develop. She showed it in the semifinal. And that is why she stands here today. Bartunova's path to this final has been different in almost every respect, but equally impressive in what it reveals about her as a competitor. She has not been the center of the week's narrative. The cameras have spent more time on Eala. The social media conversations have mostly been about Eala. The headlines have mostly been about Eala. Bartunova has been advancing through the draw without that particular kind of attention and producing performances that would have dominated the conversation in any week that did not contain one of the most compelling storylines in women's tennis. Her most significant result before the final came against a grass court specialist, a player whose entire game is engineered for success on fast courts, whose movement and tactical understanding of this surface has been developed across years of focused work on exactly these conditions. Defeating that kind of player on her preferred surface requires something beyond general talent. It requires belief in your own approach. It requires the discipline to impose your game rather than adjust your identity to match what the opponent does best. Bartunova did not try to become a grass court specialist to beat a grass court specialist. She played her game. She trusted her intelligence and her ability to create discomfort through precision, and she won convincingly. That result announced something to the rest of the draw that quiet players do not usually announce through press conferences. It said she was here for something real. The semifinal then showed the other side of what Bartunova brings. After winning the opening set, she lost momentum. Her opponent fought back. The match shifted into territory that exposes players who are only capable of winning from positions of comfort. Under that kind of pressure, Bartunova did not retreat into defensive tennis and hope for the best. She elevated. Dramatically, the deciding set was not competitive. It was a dismantling. She took control point by point with the specific calm of a player who had already identified what was required and had simply decided to do it. That is not a natural talent. That is a mental architecture that has been built deliberately over years of competitive experience. And the person standing across the net from her today is about to encounter it under the most intense conditions it will have been tested in this season. Now let us talk about what this final actually looks like tactically, because understanding the chess match underneath the tennis is what separates watching this match from experiencing it fully. Eala's game is built around controlled aggression, and her left-handed serve is the foundation of everything. That serve does something to right-handed opponents that conventional right-handed serves simply do not do. The ball moves at angles that the body's trained movement responses are not wired to handle with the same automatic efficiency. It drags opponents wide in directions that feel subtly unfamiliar. It opens court spaces that a right-handed serve cannot open from the same positions. On grass specifically, where the ball moves faster and sits lower and the margin for recovery is compressed. That angular advantage is amplified rather than absorbed. Eala has used it all week to seize control of service games from the first ball, setting up her aggressive baseline game before opponents have established the positioning they need to compete in the rally. It has been close to automatic. But Bartunkova is not a conventional opponent, and she does not create conventional problems. Her physical reach allows her to get to serves that trouble smaller players. Her ability to absorb pace and redirect the ball rather than simply defending against it means that the angles Eala's serve creates, angles that typically open the court definitively, become potential opportunities for Bartunkova to redirect into positions that Eala was not expecting to cover. The serve that works as automatic first strike pressure against most opponents becomes something that requires more variation, more deception, and more unpredictability against this specific opponent. That adjustment is one of the central tactical questions of this final. Can Eala vary her serve patterns sufficiently to prevent Bartunkova from reading them? Because if Bartunkova begins to anticipate consistently, the entire framework of Eala's service game changes from a weapon into a negotiation. On the other side of the tactical equation, Bartunkova's most dangerous tool in this match is her backhand slice and the way she deploys it. Most players use the slice defensively. It is a shot played when you need to buy time or neutralize an incoming ball that is too difficult to strike aggressively. Bartunkova uses it as an offensive instrument. Her slice skids through the grass with a trajectory that stays low and forces opponents into contact points that are neither comfortable nor conducive to generating the kind of pace that aggressive baseline players prefer. Against Eala specifically, who thrives when she can strike ground strokes from comfortable contact heights with room to accelerate through the ball, a well-executed slice that keeps everything below knee height is genuinely disruptive. It prevents her from loading up on the forehand. It forces her to dig balls up rather than drive through them. And every ball that gets dug up rather than driven through is a potential short ball that Bartunkova can step inside and attack. That chain of cause and effect, slice to low contact to short ball to attack, is the tactical template Bartunkova will be trying to execute repeatedly throughout this match. The battle for court position is going to be one of the defining ongoing struggles of this final from start to finish. Eala wants to press forward. She wants to step inside the baseline and take the ball early, compressing the time Bartunkova has to respond and generating the kind of relentless pressure that her game is designed to apply. Every time she successfully does this, she becomes extraordinarily dangerous. The crowd responds instinctively to those moments because the energy changes visibly when she is striking the ball at that position. Bartunkova's counter is to pull her out of that position. Deep returns. Precise placement to the corners that forces Eala to run wide and strike from stretched positions rather than loaded ones. Sharp angles that change the geometry of the rally before Eala has established the dominance she is looking for. It is a subtle approach. It does not produce the kind of spectacular moments that Eala's aggression produces. But subtle and ineffective are not the same thing, and against a player who depends on controlling the rally from a specific position, consistently denying that position is one of the most effective strategies available. Movement is going to be a critical differentiator as the match progresses and the physical demands accumulate. Both players move exceptionally well, but they do it differently, and those differences matter on grass. Eala relies on athletic explosiveness. She covers the court with reactive speed, chasing down balls that look like winners and converting defensive positions into offensive opportunities through the sheer quality of her recovery. It is a spectacular style of movement, and it generates enormous energy in a stadium. Bartunkova relies on something less visible, but in some ways more sustainable. She reads play before it happens. She positions herself based on probability rather than reacting to certainty. That anticipatory intelligence means she is rarely caught fully out of position because she has already moved to where the ball is most likely to go. It conserves energy. It maintains court balance. And in the later stages of a demanding final, when the legs have absorbed everything the grass court season has asked of them, that conservation may matter more than any other physical factor. There is also the psychological complexity of this specific matchup that deserves attention because it is genuinely unusual and it adds layers to this final that most championship matches simply do not contain. These two players practiced together. They were doubles partners. That experience created an exchange of knowledge that no amount of video analysis can fully replicate. When you share a court with someone as a teammate, you see things that cameras do not catch, and that scouting reports cannot capture. You see how they respond to mistakes from standing distance. You observe their routines between points. You notice the micro-patterns in their preparation that become visible only when you are a few feet away rather than across the court or watching on a screen. You hear what they say and do not say. You understand their rhythm in a way that only proximity creates. Both players walk into this final carrying that intelligence about the other, and both players know that the other is carrying it. That mutual awareness creates a chess match that begins in the warm-up. Each player knows that familiar patterns may be anticipated. Each player knows that adjustments will need to be made. Each player knows that the other is watching for exactly the things she knows are there from having stood next to her. Somewhere in the early games of this final, one of them will attempt something unexpected, something that breaks the pattern the other is anticipating, something that says, I know that you know what I usually do, and so I am going to do something different. That moment when it arrives will be one of the most interesting points of the entire match, even if most people watching do not recognize it as such. The first set is unfolding with exactly the intensity that the pre-match atmosphere promised. Neither player is conceding anything willingly. Every point is genuinely contested. Every rally carries the specific weight of a rally that both players understand is building towards something. The quality on display is remarkable, and it is remarkable in a particular way because it is not just athletic quality. It is competitive intelligence on display at high speed. Two young players making complex tactical decisions under enormous pressure and executing them with the precision of competitors who have done this long enough to trust their instincts when the moment demands it. Eala is generating the kind of pressure her game is built to generate. Her forehand, when she gets to it early and with her feet set, is one of the most destructive shots in the current field of women's tennis. The sound of it when it lands cleanly is different from most other players. The pace compresses opponents' reaction time. The angle takes them to positions they would not have chosen. The cumulative effect of facing that shot repeatedly, knowing it can arrive at any moment, produces a specific kind of psychological pressure that is separate from the shot itself. It changes how Bartunkova has to position herself even on points where the forehand never actually arrives. But Bartunkova is not wilting. She is doing what the best counterpunchers do against aggressive players. She is refusing to give Eala the clean setup she wants. She is keeping the ball deep when Eala wants it short. She is redirecting when Eala expects her to defend. She is creating the kind of rallies that are not comfortable for either player, but that are slightly more comfortable for the player who was never planning to impose her will through force. The serve is going to be the deciding factor in this match in ways that both players understand, and that the statistics will confirm when the final numbers are tallied. Eala's first serve percentage in the opening stages is not where she needs it to be. When she is landing her first serve, the point structure favors her heavily. The left-handed angle, the pace, the placement variety, these create exactly the kind of difficult starting positions that make her baseline game function at its best. But every second serve she hits is an invitation. Grass courts present the ball slightly differently than other surfaces on a second serve. It sits up just enough. It gives the returner the fraction of a second more that makes the difference between defensive and offensive. Bartunkova has the intelligence and the positioning instincts to exploit second serves at an elite level. She has been doing it all week. Against Eala's second serve specifically, she will be looking to step inside and apply the kind of pressure that shifts the entire dynamic of the service game. Every service game where Eala's first serve percentage drops is a service game where Bartunkova becomes more dangerous. Both players also understand the bigger picture that this match is embedded in. Wimbledon is weeks away. The grass court season has a momentum of its own, and that momentum matters. A player who wins a title the week before Wimbledon arrives at the most prestigious tournament in tennis carrying something that cannot be manufactured or simulated in practice. Championship confidence. The specific certainty that comes from having performed at the highest level when the pressure was greatest and having come through. That confidence changes how you walk onto the court. It changes how you approach the first service game. It changes the texture of the decisions you make in tense moments because you have recent evidence that you make those decisions well. Both Eala and Bartunkova understand this perfectly. Neither of them is thinking only about the trophy. They are thinking about what the trophy represents for what comes next. For Eala, the implications extend beyond Wimbledon and beyond even this season. Every significant result she achieves resonates across an entire country in ways that very few athletes in any sport are asked to carry. The Philippines does not have a long history of producing players who compete at this level of professional tennis. She is not just representing herself and her ambitions when she walks onto this court. She is representing proof. Proof that a Filipino athlete can develop to elite level in one of the most technically demanding individual sports on the planet. Proof that the sacrifices required, leaving home young, training in Spain, enduring the homesickness and the isolation and the pressure of being a national symbol before you are fully formed as a person. Proof that those sacrifices are worth making. Every trophy adds another piece of that proof. Every time she performs under the biggest pressure her sport can provide, she adds another data point to the argument that the ceiling of Filipino tennis has not been found yet. For Bartunkova, the motivation is different, but equally powerful. Czech women's tennis has a tradition of excellence so deep and so sustained that it creates a specific kind of pressure for every young Czech player entering the professional game. Generation after generation has produced champions. The bar is not just high, it is documented. It exists in trophies and rankings and the memories of a country that has watched its women compete at the top of the sport for decades. A victory here would establish Bartunkova as more than a promising player who is developing well and heading in the right direction. It would establish her as a player who can win on the most demanding surfaces at the most demanding moments. It would make the rest of the tour pay a different kind of attention before Wimbledon. Nobody seated at a Grand Slam wants to look at the draw and find Bartunkova in the first week. A Birmingham title would ensure that her name produces that specific reaction in every player's area across the tour. The match is entering its decisive phases now, and what is happening on the court reflects everything that was promised by the pre-match context. This is a battle between two futures, between two ways of playing the game that are both entirely legitimate and entirely different. Between a player who imposes through force and a player who dismantles through intelligence. Between explosive athleticism and predictive positioning. Between the weight of national expectation and the freedom of a competitor playing with nothing to lose and everything to gain. Between two women who know each other better than most opponents ever know each other, and who are using that knowledge in real time to try to find an edge that the other has not anticipated. The crowd is fully present in this. They are not watching passively. They are leaning into every rally. They are responding to every momentum shift. They know they are watching something that the grass courts of Edgbaston Priory have hosted great players across decades of history. Names that became legends walked these grounds. Championships that defined careers were decided here. And today, two 20-year-olds are adding their chapter to that history regardless of which one ultimately holds the trophy above her head at the end of the afternoon. What remains is the specific collection of moments that determine championship matches. A perfectly executed serve at a critical score. A courageous return that changes the psychology of a service game. A backhand down the line that arrives a fraction earlier than the opponent expected. A decision made under the maximum possible pressure that comes out right. These are not planned. They cannot be rehearsed. They are produced by everything a player is, everything they have built, everything they have survived, and every moment that has brought them to this exact place on this exact surface on this exact afternoon. One of these two players is going to find those moments more reliably than the other. One of them is going to walk to the net at the end of this final having proved something that goes beyond the Birmingham Trophy. Having proved that when the grass court season demands everything, they had everything to give. The future of women's tennis is on center court right now, and it is extraordinary.